Hello, I am a tabletop hobbyist, and recently I went to a Warhammer 40k, 2,000 point tournament, and I did all right, 2-1. Let's get into it. Now, you all may hear the sounds of suburbia in the background. It is a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and I am relaxing before work before I, go be miserable for a couple hours. So, instead, I'm going to talk about my favorite game and talk about my experiences at my most recent tournament, just to kind of brighten my mood up a little bit. Now, this is probably going to be a much longer video than my normal ones, but if you've seen my old tournament reviews, then it's going to be more of the same, except you're not going to see my face. With all the talking out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the guts of this tournament. So, let's go ahead and jump into the list. This time around, I brought Death Guard. I was going to bring World Eaters, but then I played that list a few times, like 1 or 2 times. It did alright the first time, and the second time it didn't really perform to a state where I was just like, yeah, I can bring this to a tournament. So instead, I went ahead and went with the army that I have a few more practice games with, and I went with the Death Guard. Because I just love them so much. Terminators is my favorite way to play Death Guard. So of course, I took a 10-man brick of Terminators, the Blightlords, and then I took 2 3-mans of Deathshroud. I could have been convinced to take 2 5-mans and kind of found the point somewhere else in the list, but, I didn't. Anyway, let's actually talk about the list, and we're going to do it in the standard order, and that is going to be from the top down. So, first of all, we've got a Death Guard Demon Prince. He's got Curse of the Leper as his spell. He's got the Wings, the Gloaming Bloat, because sometimes I like to pass that out. And that's it. Then we got 2 Malignant Plaguecasters, one with the Periapt, the other with nothing. Both have Putrescent Vitality. The one with the Periapt has Gift of Contagion, Gift of Plagues, and the other has Miasma of Pestilence. That's just to give out that -1, and I want that +1 toughness, +1 strength. The -1 to hit from the Miasma kind of makes the Terminators not worth shooting at anymore, and if they also get that Putrescent Vitality, they'll be T6, and they'll just be in the middle of the board annoying you, because it's a 2-up into a 4-up. I mean, it's kind of evil. My troop slot, I have Plague Marines, just a unit of 5, 2 with bolt guns, a Plague Marine Champion with the Fist, one with a Blight Launcher, and the other with the Plasma Gun. I didn't think I'd ever use it, but I was just like, I have the models, might as well do it. Then I have 2 units of 12 Poxwalkers, for a total of 24 Poxwalkers. The reason why I have these Poxwalkers is really just to hopefully grab an objective after they've been shot, and then I can bring them back up to 7 with them, with the Dead Walk again, every command phase. Well, I mean, only once per squad, so I can only do it 2 times. But anyway, it's just real fun to kind of daisy chain out there. Make sure you get that spread the sickness in the first turn on an outside objective, or maybe, I only did that once, or maybe, just have more Poxwalkers to do mortal wounds with, because, mortal wounds will just really make quick work of just about anything, and I just kind of love having Poxwalkers. I don't like the Poxwalker model, though, so I used ghouls, and then T.O. was just like, hey, home dog, big buddy dog, he didn't say most of those words, your Poxwalkers are probably too short, So if anyone has any line of sight problems, just ask, and I'll pull out one of my Poxwalkers, and we'll be good to go. It never came up. I didn't think it would, because if my Poxwalkers were hiding, it'd be because they were out of line of sight, you know, like behind a building. Not too short. Anyway, we're gonna move on to the beef of this list, and the beef is the elites, because I really love the elite slot. The elite slot on the Death Guard is probably one of my favorite things ever. I mean, really just the elite spot of most armies is pretty fun. We've got a unit of 10 Blightlord Terminators. 8 of them have the swords, 2 of them have the flails, and they just walk up the board. That's all these guys do. They soak up firepower, they get shot at, they survive, you know? I never lost the whole unit during any of my games, you know? And anytime you're shooting at Blightlords, you're not shooting at something else. And it's not even like my list had many things to contend with as far as like shooting targets. But we'll get into that later. Just know that those Blightlords definitely did their job, and I love them. They're my favorite. And I used to not like this next unit, but I have come around to it recently. I have come around to it, and I think that what it is the fact that they are as durable as Blightlords, except they're far more killy, and I love them. And I didn't think that I would. It's the Deathshroud. That's that 2 units of 3 that I was talking about earlier. The Scythes are just excellent at killing Marines, and in a RTT, you're gonna run into Marines probably, depending on what part of the world you're in. And it's just the only problem I had with my Deathshroud was the fact that I put them in Deep Strike 2 out of 3 games. I put both squads in Deep Strike, and I just couldn't make my charges into my targets, even if they were in a ruin. I couldn't make an 8-inch charge. It was awful. But I did still kill those targets eventually. You know, I had to walk up to them because, you know, when Deathshroud don't make it, people just shoot at those because they're thinking this is an easier target than the Blightlords, and they're correct. It is an easier target because there's less of them and they aren't buffed up because they came in at the end of my movement phase. They're probably on the outside of my psychic abilities, so I'm definitely not buffing them. But they get shot at, and they're as durable as the Blightlords, and so they survive. Usually, there's like 2 of them left. One on, like, 1 wound. But that's just how it is when you're playing with Deathshroud. And I just love these Terminators so much. Anyway, my next and final elite slot is the Foul Blight spawn. I love the Foul Blight spawn. I love everything in the elite spot. I know I already said that. He had the Arch Contaminator relic. He was Plague Chosen. I mean, he had the Revolting Stench Fats relic. And the Arch Contaminator Warlord trait. His Flamer came in clutch a couple of times because it was allowing me to put on some preliminary wounds to tougher targets because of just how strong it is and the fact that Death Guard have their Contagion where they reduce toughness of enemies within a certain number of inches. That really helped because what I would do is I would put Foul Blight spawn in the middle of a ball of Terminators, and I would just have him have people not count as charging, and if they came within 3 inches of him during their charge, I would have them get fight lasted. That actually never came up at any point during the tournament, but the losing your charge while going into Terminators, or perhaps a Flesh Mower, which I'm about to get into, that'll really just mess you up. It'll ruin your day, because, you know, no one likes having to fight normally. Other than me, because I'm tough. After that, we move into my fast attack. My fast attack, I got the Foetid Bloat drone with a flesh mower, of course. You know, you're going to see it in most Death Guard lists. It's just really good at killing things. I wish that you could do the overwhelming, whatever it's called, where all the excess damage like goes on to other things, but you have to be core for that, so you can't. And then my other fast attack unit is 2 units of 2 Mephitic Blight Haulers. Now, they performed better today than I've ever seen my Mephitic Blight Haulers perform. They were reliable. They did, miss all of their shots occasionally because they have no rerolls. They have no help. But they did do their job. The Meltas allowed me to kill a Land Raider in turn 1. The Krak missiles, helped put down extra fire support. And the Bile Spurt and their melee potential just kind of helped clean up a couple of things around the board throughout the entire game. The fact that they move so quickly helped secure objectives. And they have a very small profile, if you think about it. And you can just hide them behind a building, and then you just pop out your little go-karts and pop your enemy with a red, green, and blue turtle shell. It's just it was a very good time. And I never lost I lost all of them at one point. Is that true? That's not true. I did not lose all of them. I'd lose most of them, but I'd usually be down to 1. And it's because, 9 wounds at T7, you're shooting into that, I'm reducing damage by 1. It's kinda outrageous. It is upsetting to play against, because, I've been on the receiving end of Death Guard, but it's very fun to do. And I think that's a lot of Warhammer armies. But anyway, that actually rounds out the list. I don't know how long it took me to talk about that, but that was my list that I brought. And I already kind of talked about the bread and the butter, so let's talk about what my thoughts were when I was making the list. I wanted to play a game where I already knew going into every game what secondaries I was going to take, and so I made a list all about doing those secondaries. I guess I should talk about the secondaries that I picked, and then we'll talk about why I built the list that way that I did. We'll do it live. So, secondaries: Spread the Sickness, of course. Despoiled Ground, that was a surprise. And Psychic Interrogation. So 2 from the Death Guard list, and 1 from the core rules. Psychic Interrogation, I had 3 Psychers. I was going to Psychic Interrogate somebody. And I was going to learn all their secrets. I even got a command point back on it one time, and that was awesome. But those were my secondaries. So Despoiled Ground, basically have to survive the game, get everything within Contagion range. There's a cicada trying to land on my porch. So if he starts being loud, I'm going to go whack him. Nah, he's gone. Alright, so try to get everything into Contagion range, be in 3-4 table quarters, be in your opponent's deployment zone. All things that I could accomplish and did accomplish in all but one of my games. Spread the Sickness, easy 7 points, probably a relatively difficult 11, and if you're winning, you can get 15 on it. And Psychic Interrogation. Be within 24 inches of a character with a Psyker. Don't have to see him. And cast on a 4-up. That is the easiest 3 points you're going to get in a game of Warhammer. And if you position properly, you can get 15 points on it, assuming that your opponent doesn't try to dodge it. And I mean, what's the chances that your opponent's going to bring a token Psyker and want to waste their 1 deny, or maybe 2 denies, on your psychic action? Because it's not like it's a psychic spell. You can try that one again. So, what's the point, They try to deny you for 3 points. You're like, okay, big dog, I'll just cast it with someone else. And then I'll still put Putrescent Vitality in my Asthma of Pestilence. onto these Terminators because I don't care. I built redundancy into the list because, if I'm honest, I had a fear of a certain Blood Angels player who will null zone my Terminators, so I wanted to make sure that I was ready to deny him no matter where he was. I was going to make sure his psychic phase was the non-psychic phase. I was going to make sure he had a headache. But anyway, back to why I built my list the way that I did. I really wanted to play with Terminators because I love Terminators. I only have 15 Blightlord Terminators. I want to get it up to 20, but I want the next 5 to have axes, even though swords are better. But if I had 10 with axes and 10 with swords, that'd be kind of cool. The Deathshroud were there because they're basically the scalpel that I use to cut out the important bits of my opponent's army. Take out objectives that are on the sides, take out their backfield objective holders, just kind of to get that flanking action and also get to places where Death Guard cannot get to normally. So that was really important, and that's the reason why I put the Deathshroud in. The Foul Blight spawn was giving the Arch Contaminator rerolls of, plague weapons, so occasionally I'd spend a command point on virulent rounds, turn all my bolt weapons on the Blightlords into plague weapons, so I'm rerolling wounds. I'd use that to chip a couple of wounds off of high toughness targets before dropping Melta into it, because, don't want to have to put all my Melta into one thing. But I will happily. The Poxwalkers, they get shot at, a couple of them come back, grab an objective, and the reason why I like that is because it's done during the command phase, and at the end of the command phase, you score objectives. So I can have an opponent think I'm not going to make it to an objective, they shoot my Poxwalkers, I bring some back, and I'm suddenly on that objective, and I have it, with some OBSEC bodies, and that's always good. The Plague Marines didn't really do anything, and the Mephitic Blight Haulers were to make sure that I had guns, because that's one thing that Death Guard are kind of lacking in, and that's guns. I don't have any Plague Burst Crawlers yet. One day I'll get some. But I like the idea of being able to shoot from out of line of sight without a penalty, so at the moment, the model's just not that appealing to me. But they are good. There were a couple other Death Guard players, and they were using their Plague Burst Crawlers. But I just don't like... It's not as mobile. And it's not really doing what I needed it to be doing. I didn't need something to sit in my backfield and shoot. I just needed something to sit in my backfield. Because any points that I spend on a Plague Burst Crawler, that's something I have to take out of the list. And what would I take out of the list? I wouldn't take out the Flesh Mower, because the Flesh Mower can go and clear an objective by itself, without any support. And then it doesn't need to have OBSEC because it just killed everything there. I'm not going to take out the Mephitic Blight Haulers because the Mephitic Blight Haulers can respond to other parts of the board incredibly quickly. The Terminators, you're not going to touch my Terminators. And I could maybe take out one Psyker, but then I'd also have to take out a couple of Poxwalkers. And since the weapons on the Plague Marines are free now, it's not even like I could make points there. So, I just don't have anywhere in the list to fit one in. If Plague Burst, if Mephitic Blight Haulers went up in points, then, I'd talk about a Plague Burst Crawler. Maybe I could drop down to 2 Mephitic Blight Haulers in this list. And then take... those 2 extra... No. I take 1 extra Blightlord and then take that Plague Burst Crawler. But that's basically all I could really even consider doing. Now, that's my list. That's how I was thinking. Those are my secondaries. Let's get into my games. I went 2-1. Why did I go 2-1? How did I go 2-1? Well, I won 2 games and I lost 1. Thanks for coming, everybody. I'm a tabletop hockey. But let's actually talk about what happened. So it's mission 33, secure missing artifacts. After we choose our deployment zones, but before we declare reserves and transports, we each get to move some objective markers. The attacker moves A, the defender moves A and B, and the attacker gets to move A or B, basically whichever one hasn't been moved yet. It's a take and hold, control 1, control 2, control more, and it's taco style deployment. So we got like the diagonal edge with like a 24-inch no man's land, I think. It's a 5 objective mission, so Stranglehold would have been crazy on this one, because it would have been, kind of what you have to do to play the game. But now, you can't do Stranglehold, so that's fun. So, I failed myself here in this first game, because I thought to disrupt my opponent and not to help myself. So my first mistake is I moved my opponent's back objective out into the open. I really should have actually moved it into the ruin, because then I would have had 8-inch charge onto it, assuming he had someone on that objective with my Deathshroud. Another mistake that I made was I moved the objective near my deployment zone back, more out towards no man's land for some reason, and I don't really understand why I did that. It made it closer to him. And then he repositioned the last objective and put it into his deployment zone, basically. And I flubbed that one, and I realized it pretty quickly too. And I was just like, dang, that's not good, because he was basically able to hold 2 objectives almost from the jump. So 2 objectives were his the entire game, basically, and I had guffed myself. He was playing Necrons with the standard custom dynasty, which is the 6-inch pregame move, and the everyone's OBSEC. If you have OBSEC, your double OBSEC. So we can say that my opponent definitely was not there to suck any toes, if you know what I mean. He was there to really go to town on some people. What I remember from his list, the Canoptic Catacomb Command Barge. It's the Catacomb Command Barge. I know Necrons. A Technomancer, a Luminor Xeris, 2 units of Immortals, 2 units of Scarab, 1 of 6, 1 of 3, a unit of 5 Wraiths, the Doomsday Arc, that was funny, 3 Spiders, and I know he had 3 Locust Heavy Destroyers, 2 units of 3 Locust Heavy Destroyers, and what was his last troop choice? I know he had 2 units of Immortals. Scarabs are fast attack. Give me a moment. Alright, so he took 2 patrols, and he brought something that I am familiar with. Something that I faced thrice now. Something dark. Something that should not be. He brought the Catan Shard of the Nightbringer, and I was just like, the first time I went against the Catan Shard, I was playing Tau, and I got wrecked by it, because I only had 1 phase of the game to do damage in, and I tried to do damage. I did try to do damage in the melee phase, I did, and I suffered for it. Why? Why would you bring the Catan Shard of the Nightbringer? It's just so scary. I don't like it. It's too strong. It's too strong. And it's hard to deal with. But I did deal with it today, because I'm now familiar with it. The second time I faced him, I did not slay him, but I did wound him considerably. I got him down to about 4 wounds. I got really southern there. Sorry, y'all. And then he got healed back up because living metal and all that jazz. But this third time, I had a plan. And that was to jump him psychically, shoot him physically, and stab him intimately. Big shout out to the Don't Count as Charged from the foul Blight spawn. Because he charged into me. He knew about this aura. He charged into me in my flesh mower, which was within 6 inches of my foul Blight spawn, and his Nightbringer had 3 wounds left. 4 wounds left. And then I took him down to 1. And he didn't kill my flesh mower. And so, my turn, I get to fall back and just shoot him. I kill him. Finally, I have slayed the Nightbringer once. And hopefully I never have to do it again, because, y'all, he's just so squirrely. He's got a 4-up invuln. He's moving like 8 inches. And they're not psychic powers that he casts. They're Catan powers. And they just do mortal wounds for existing. But luckily my opponent wasn't rolling too hot on it. So I was spared this time. But historically, I get guffed by the Nightbringer every single time. Y'all, there's a man doing practice flights in circles, like, around my neighborhood. So, we have repeatedly heard the same plane. And I've looked every time. It is definitely the same plane. I mean, and, the flight pattern looks good. I'm no expert. I'm definitely no expert. But, I'm not seeing a visible wobble. I'm not having any cause for concern. I'm not worried that a plane's about to come down on my house. That'd be crazy. Hope it doesn't hit my Warhammer stuff. Or me. Because that would suck. Anyway, let's talk about the issue. The issue being, I couldn't play around the Necron secondaries. Frankie picked wonderful secondaries. He picked Purge the Vermin, Treasure of Eons, and Ancient Machineries. He capped Treasure of Eons. He got 12 points on Ancient Machineries and 7 points on Purge the Vermin, because once I started to spread out, he couldn't really do too much to stop me. But he got Control More on round 2, so that's 12 points, plus 3 for Precious Artifacts, so 15 points. He got 11 points in round 3, he got 12 points in round 4, and 8 points in round 5, meaning he capped his primary. I only got 29 points on the primary, and I got 12 points on Psychic Interrogation. I only got 6 points on Despoiled Ground, and for Spread the Sickness, I got 3 points, because I couldn't spread the sickness anywhere because I was either tied into combat because I hadn't completely finished killing something, or I wasn't controlling the objective because of so many obsec bodies that he had. If I was on an objective with 5 Terminators, there would be 3 Scarabs left, and the Spiders would bring one back, and the Technomance would bring one back, and I'd just be out of luck, because now it's contested. And then, he's probably going to charge, so he's going to have more things on the objective than I am, and it was just a vicious cycle. It was like, who wants to play against an army that is just so durable and can bring models back? Like, that's not fun gameplay. You know? It's bad enough that Necrons are kind of tough. You know, they don't have the invulns, but still. Okay. That's a joke. Right there. Because I know I play Death Guard. So, you know. And it was a pleasure to lose against Frankie. He played very well. He did not kill the entire unit of Blightlords. He did kill a unit of Deathshroud. And eventually, it came down to the last couple of rolls that really sealed it for me. At one point, I had Blightlords fighting 3 heavy destroyers and Illuminor Xeris. I survived Illuminor Xeris. I put all of my attacks into, with just a champion, my Deathshroud champion, sorry, into the dudes, the Scorpec, the heavy destroyers, and I mean, I could only kill 2 of them at max, and that's exactly what happened. I killed 2 of them at max. But see, it didn't really matter who I fought, because if I put all my attacks into Xeris, I would kill Xeris, and then in the next round of combat, when we came around to it, I could put all of my attacks and only kill 2 at max. Maybe if I split my attacks, I would have been able to kill everything, but looking back at it now, it's a worthy gamble, because I know I killed Xeris in 3, and I could have killed a Locust Heavy Destroyer in 2. So, it was painful, because it kept me from getting a control to hold more. It was a really good game, though, you know? I didn't feel bad losing. I never really feel bad losing, though. But my opponent was good. His army looked good. And it was a fun game. So, at the end of it, my opponent took the day with 89 points to my 60. And that loss went ahead and put me into the loser's bracket. And basically out of contention for winning the tournament. Let's go on to game 2. Now, my second game was against an opponent who, it was their 6th or 7th game of Warhammer. He got in just before the pandemic, and he painted his army completely before ever playing a game with them. It was a Red Scorpions Firstborn Force with a Land Raider, 2 Leviathan Dreadnoughts, and a whole bunch of tack squads. Had 2 Razorbacks with the chain cannons and a unit of Terminators. And y'all, it's just a beautiful army. And you're going to see it here. You're going to see some pictures of it. You're going to see a little video of it. And then, this battle, I remembered to take way more photos. Does that necessarily mean I'm going to describe what's going on in the photos? No. But I will try. This mission was Data Scry Salvage. And the terrain was not very helpful to my army. I could not really just move up and kind of stay behind cover. I had a very slow, breakout from the gate. And, I did the typical Death Guard start where I just advanced everything. But this terrain basically had -1s to hits going everywhere, which that was helpful. But I would have preferred just not getting shot at, especially when I was going up against such a oppressive shooting force. My opponent took Engage on All Fronts, Retrieve Nephilim Data, and Oaths of Moment. So, you can kind of tell what his plan is because of those Razorbacks. He's going to try to get those troops out there and retrieve Nephilim Data in 3 table quarters, hopefully 4. Engage on all fronts, got the Razorbacks. He's going to try to get in all 3 table quarters, maybe all 4, but at least 3. and Oaths of Moment. Typical Space Marine move. I'm not sure if it's as typical in Nephilim. He scored the best on this. He got 10 Oaths of Moment points. I, took my normal secondaries. So Despoiled Ground, I got 15 points on. Psychic Interrogation, I got 12 points on. And Spread the Sickness, I got 11 points on. Because at the end of round 4, we had to dice down. If we had kept on going, I would have gotten 15 on Psychic Interrogation and, 15 on Spread the Sickness. I was playing against a slightly newer player. So, he made a couple of mistakes, like bringing in his Terminators in front of my Blightlords and failing to charge, when I believe he should have tried to find a little bit of wiggle room somewhere in my backfield and bring his Terminators in there and get the R&D. I think he should have stayed inside of his Razorback a little bit longer, and instead of shooting and then charging at me, he probably should have done R&D in a table quarter, and then the next turn do R&D in another table quarter, and then worry about trying to kill the Poxwalkers off the objective. Especially since the Razorback, mostly did it. And it'd be just more about having numbers. And that was kind of the big flaw, because he never got into my table quarter truly, as in my starting table quarter. Also, the mission is Data Scry Salvage. That is the taco style deployment, and it's got 6 objective markers. 4 of them are in no man's land, 1 is in the deployment zone, and you have an action that you can do on your home objective for each point that you control outside of your own, your deployment zone. You can get points for it, so up to 3 points maximum per turn, and that was great. And now I'm about to say something that a lot of people say. If I was faster, and if I had one more round, I definitely would have scored a lot higher. Which still, would have just got me more points, but I'd also still be out of contention for winning, because points don't matter once you get a loss. The Control 2, Control 3, Control More really hampered me a lot, because I didn't have that much staying power because of the amount of, guns that were going into my Poxwalkers. I mean, the Blightlords didn't die, but, I did have issues doing things. My Deathshroud, one of the units failed their charge from Deep Strike and was left sitting out in the open, so they got picked apart. My other unit made their charge into a unit of Devastators with las cannons, killed 4 of them. That was cool. Their captain charged in, managed to kill most of the Deathshroud. Then the Deathshroud fight back into the captain, and they put him down after 2 rounds of combat. And that just kind of... I was locked in with his troops on the back objective, so I could never take it from him, but I was making 2-up saves. I wasn't too worried about a bunch of tactical marines fighting into me, especially since I was kind of just picking them up every time I swung the axe. Hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s. There's not much you can do with that AP minus 3/2 damage is coming through to you. So, that was fun. This is the game where I gained a command point because of my Psychic Interrogation. I rolled a 10 against a Space Marine, and that meant that I got a command point. That was awesome. I loved that. Now, let me talk about my opponent's army. It was beautiful. I loved it. I looked at it, and I was just like, damn. That is a well-painted army. And I am happy to play against it. He had a Land Raider, and I've never played against someone using a Land Raider before, because I'm still relatively new to 40k. And, I mean, I was almost sad to blow it up, but I wasn't that sad, you know. If you look at the pictures that are on your screen at the moment, you'll see how the Land Raider was there, it moved up, and then it's not there anymore. And it's gone. And I still have a lot of Melta. And for some reason, we were about to clash in the middle, and I don't understand why. There was no reason for us to fight in the middle of this board. We could have just fought for objectives, but he seemed determined to come towards me, and Mama raised a soldier, so I'm gonna come at him, and it just happened. We just threw it down in the middle, and that's where I fought his dreadnoughts. That's where I fought the Terminators, and that's where I won against both of those models, because when you got mortal wounds and Melkas coming at you, there's only so much you can do, even when you're reducing damage. One of my big plays was heroically intervening my Demon Prince into the Terminators as they were coming in with their power fist, because it was Terminators versus my Mephitic Blight Hauler, and so I heroically intervened in. First, I heroically intervened my characters away from, well, closer to his models, but not into engagement range. And then I heroically intervened my Demon Prince into engagement range so that he could fight. The Terminators put all their attacks into the Mephitic Blight Hauler. My Demon Prince kills 2 Terminators. And then, after that, I make sure that in my turn, my Psykers are able to cast all of their spells into the Terminators, dealing a couple of mortal wounds. I get a lot of 7-ups, so I'm doing more mortal wounds with Pestilential Fallout. And as I'm doing this, I'm just watching these Terminators drop till it's down to 1, and then I just cut them in half with my sword, because that's what you're supposed to do. So that went very well. That was the only game that I lost a character, because I left my Foul Blight spawn exposed, because I am a fool. And that was the second time that that's happened. The only other time that it's happened was against a certain Blood Angels player who's just evil. He's just a terrible, mean man. And now, why don't we take a look at some of the other tables of the day and just kind of relax and look at the images of the game store. With that out of the way, we'll move into my third game. And my third game was against an opponent that I am very familiar with, because I play against him relatively often. It's Spanky, and he's playing his Knights. And he had me for a bit. Round 2, round 3, the mission was conversion. That's table corners. Round 2 and round 3, I only controlled one objective marker, because Knights are just so dominant with their OBSEC presence, and I had to, move Poxwalkers to get there, and I couldn't rely on charging onto the objectives, because my 9-inch charges had not been so hot that day, and also, I would rather guarantee making it on a turn later than possibly making it on now and losing all my models. Because that doesn't fly with me, What's the point being on an objective if you're dead? And I guess I am technically already dead, because I'm playing Death Guard, but it doesn't matter. But I managed to make sure that I was always fighting for the center. At the end of my turn, I would always have the center objective. And that was always the goal, because you want to make sure that you're keeping up with that. Now, my turn 1, I go first. I drop every single Melta I have into killing the biggest knight there is. And it mostly works. The next turn, his turn, he moves up a bit, goes on to the center objective. I'm like, that's cool. I move my Blightlords up. I fire into him. They do a little bit of damage. I fire a bit of Melta into him. It kills him. He doesn't explode. And I'm like, cool. He's like, you've probably just won this game, because that was going to be my way to kill your Terminators. And I'm like, cool. I'm happy to hear it. And so I then went on to just kind of systematically kill a knight with Mephitic Blight Haulers, and I'd prime them with mortal wounds, for my psychic spells, and then I'd drop a couple of Melta shots into them and hope for the good stuff. Turn 2, I bring in 1 unit of Deathshroud Terminators to charge them in. They fail their charge because it's 9 inches, and apparently I just can't do it today. So I move them up and make sure I get the charge in the next turn. I mean, it's an opponent that I'm familiar with, so I can't really be like, that was unexpected. I know how to play against him, and I know his style, because he loves his knights, but there's some handicaps to him, like they have a 5-up invuln, and they have no invuln in melee combat. And I will happily chop you apart at 2 damage. He had the 6-up Feel No Pain, because he was House Tyrannus, and it just, it wasn't working out for him. So, turn 4, he falls back out of combat with one of my Deathshroud Terminators, because, in true to form, I only had 1 left after a combat. And he charges into my Blightlords, and he gets absolutely bloated on. But first, he spins a command point, and he goes, roll a dice real quick. And I'm like, okay, what's it for? And he tells me the stratagem name. He tells me what the stratagem does. I don't really remember it, but I roll a 6. He rolls a 5. He's just like, you just won the game. I reduced my number of attacks down to 0. I cannot kill you. You will kill this guy. And I'm like, cool. GG. So he concedes. Well, kind of concedes. Like I say he concedes. It's more of a, he acknowledged that I'm about to win. But we continue to play it out. Because, I just like rolling dice. I don't like just ending the game. But I end the game with 40 on my primary. And I max out all of my secondaries, which I have never done before. So that felt great. I got 15 points on Spread the Sickness, 15 points on Psychic Interrogation, and I got 15 points on Despoiled Ground. And it felt great. My opponent took Yield No Ground. He got 10 points on that, but then I got into his backfield, and that just, ruined his day. Renew the Oaths. He got 8 points on that, because eventually I took the center completely. And 0 points on Assassination, and that really hampered him. That's just because Death Guard are tough. And I'm going to make sure that I put him behind a wall of Terminators. And if you get to my characters, I'll heroically intervene the Terminators into you. Because I like this list, and I like the way it plays. Like, this was a very fun tournament. I scored 230 points in the end. Obviously, didn't make it to the podium this time, but I came 5th out of 19 players, so that felt nice. It's always nice to make it into the top 10, unless there's only 10 players. But making it into the top 10, and then making it into the top 5, very fun. One day, I need to make it into the top 3. Thanks for listening to me kind of ramble on about my Warhammer experience. I hope you enjoyed it, y'all. It was very fun to talk about. Like, comment, subscribe. I know it was very casual, very lax, I got more of the normal content coming. It's just I work and I get tired. And your boy doesn't feel like doing anything sometimes. But that's just how it goes. So, like, comment, subscribe. Hey, let me know what you think of the Death Guard. Let me know what you think of my list. Maybe I'll talk to a couple of the other Death Guard players that were at the tournament. And, see what they were doing. Yeah. Oh, that sounds kind of cool. Maybe I'll do that. So, yeah. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. And thank you for listening. Auf Wiedersehen. Bye.